Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Lock Shop. Nielsen and Huss back with you once again. Happy Wednesday. The Lock Shop, as always, brought to you by our wonderful partners at Coolbet. If you're not yet signed up for an account, you know how to do it. Just use the code LOCKSHOP when you sign up, and you are off and running with a nice little deposit bonus on your initial deposit up to $200. We got some puck picks coming your way, a little Wednesday night action in the National Hockey League, and of course, we got Week 19 in the CFL. Buddy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, although I've got a little FOMO right now because we got to wait 2 more days for the Jets to get on the ice here for the home opener on Friday night. But will you be gracing the building with your presence tonight for the Oilers home opener?
Only come out for the big ones, and I will be there tonight for the Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks. I will have a little wager on the game, and we'll see how this one plays out, buddy.
Yeah, I'm much like NFL season. I have pledged to keep it light in the first couple weeks, see how things shake out. But I do have a parlay tonight that we'll get to a little bit later on. But I'm looking forward to this. Is a really weird week in the Canadian Football League. I mean, looking at these games, and I mean, is really have to go back just a quick recap of last week. I mean, that huge win for Hamilton over Saskatchewan all of a sudden made the battle for the crossover, that final spot in the East, quite interesting. And let me just give a shout out to Bobby Dice. It ruined our pick.
Huge win.
We were both in, but I got to tell you, Bobby Dice is he's such a nice man. He's a guy that everyone in here in Winnipeg loves. I mean, if you've had a chance to meet him before, he's just one of the real good guys. Did you see that video that the Red Blacks posted of the post-game celebration in the locker room?
I did not see that.
Okay, I was blown away. Bob Dice, if you've ever heard him talk, he's very quiet, soft-spoken, well thought out. He dropped 15 to 20 F-bombs in about a minute 30, and they didn't edit out a single one of them. It was there was a lot of passion and emotion in that game. So, listen, good for Ottawa. They, of course, are done for the year, but trying to move forward under Bob Dice. And I'll say this, just as, with no skin in the game, I know that Sean Burke said that Bob Dice would absolutely be considered for that head coaching job. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets it. They put in an OC, they put in a DC sort of under this Winnipeg model. And if that's the case, there is some talent on that club, especially if you get a quarterback in there that can move the football. So I don't know. Ottawa's interesting to me. Nice win for the Red Blacks after such a miserable season that they've had so far.
If they win out and get help, they could still make the playoffs, which is insane to think. But they would need help, but they could still make the playoffs, which is kind of remarkable when you think about it. So we'll see what happens. It's highly unlikely, but they're going up against Montreal again this week, Huss. They bit us last week, yet we're both going to go back to Montreal again this week after losing at home 24-18. What's your reasoning behind it, buddy?
Well, listen, I mean, I think it was Montreal was comfortably up in that game too. I want to say it was 15-6 at halftime. And this is one of the things about Montreal. I mean, they've looked really good at times, and then they've looked absolutely stagnant at others. This is a very important time in the season for Montreal to get their act together, to get ready for that East semi, and in all likelihood, a battle with the Toronto Argonauts for a trip to the Grey Cup. I just think they get it right this time. I mean, I think they are a better team. I know they're on the road, and I know we're laying 3 points, but I think we see a resounding response from the Montreal Alouettes. And much like we'll get to Edmonton a little later on, the one thing you can count on this year, and maybe this is different under Bob Dice, is that the Red Blacks have been absolutely horrible on home field right now. And listen, they're going to be playing a very angry opponent that they just beat. Be very difficult to go 2 in a row. So I feel pretty good about laying the 3 on Montreal in this game.
Yeah, Arbuckle, and maybe it's the way they simplified the game, maybe it's the way they called the game, but Arbuckle was 28 of 32 in that win, which, I mean, he didn't throw a touchdown pass, but he was 28 of 32. And I don't know if do they need Arbuckle to play that well to win again? maybe not, but I don't know if Arbuckle's going to go throw out and complete 30 or 87 or 88% of his passes again. Trevor Harris, maybe. Trevor Harris has always been one of the most in fact, statistically, he's the most accurate quarterback in the history of the game. But Montreal's defense let me down a little bit last week, too. I thought they were going to contain Ottawa a little bit better than they did. So I'm on a Montreal bounce back here. I do believe they're the better team. It's a decent number here at 3. I'm rolling with you on Montreal here, -3. In fact, we're on a lot of the same pages in the CFL this week.
I'll say this, and again, I say this with the utmost respect and love for Lapo. He was always great here in Winnipeg and was a great friend of the show. But, man, that was a tough look for Lapo when they bring in a dude basically off the street to call plays and sets up an offensive game plan that allows Nick Arbuckle to go 28 of 32 in the football game. That entire Ottawa situation was a real disappointment this year. Of course, Masoli had a big part of it, but I do think it's Montreal's time. Hamilton, however, very much in the mix after that win last week against Saskatchewan. And I'll say this, there's a lot of other teams or a lot of other places I think I'd be banking on the Ticats this week. In Calgary is not one of them, Dusty.
No. I don't think so. I mean, you look at the Calgary Stampeders, and to me right now, they are Winnipeg's biggest threat of going back to back here. I mean, I think that's the one thing, nothing against Toronto, but I mean, Calgary's really good. Calgary's a very good football team, and they've been in that other tier pretty much the entire year. Now, has Hamilton got a little bit better recently? Sure they have. But I'd be stunned if they're rolling out and winning against the Calgary Stampeders. 7's a pretty big number, but I think this just goes to show how good the Calgary Stampeders are. They can run it down your throat. Jake Maier has a number of weapons who are having pretty nice seasons as well. And this is a defense, especially their front four, is having a hell of a year as far as pressuring the quarterback goes. So I give Calgary basically the advantage in every single aspect of this football game. And because of that, I don't want to say I'm loving the 7, but I'm pretty comfortable with the 7, Huss.
Well, I am too. And I mean, listen, before we give too much credit to the Hamilton Tiger Cats, they beat the Riders, who have been an absolute dumpster fire for the better part of the last 2 weeks. I mean, I keep on looking at these standings, man, and they started 4-1, right? That means they're 8-2-8 in their last 10 games.
It's been they've completely fallen apart.
Beating Saskatchewan by 4 at home, hell of a lot different than going into Calgary to play a team that, let's not forget, is right now tied with the BC Lions at 10-5, and BC has the tiebreaker. So these games are very important for Calgary, and I think Calgary continues to play at the level that they have before. I think Jake Maier continues to get better chemistry with the receivers. And listen, as it gets colder outside, the one thing that, you have to respect for Calgary is the best running game in the Canadian Football League. And I think all of this sets up for a big day for Calgary and a long night at the office for the Ticats.
Yeah, 100% agree. The one game we're going head-to-head on is Toronto versus the Elks at home. And here I am again thinking that maybe this is the weekend. It's probably not. This is a team, though, and I will give them credit from this aspect of it. First of all, they desperately need a home win. They gotta have one. Like, you cannot go winless at home again. But they're also a team who's taken a few bare butt spankings along the way and have bounced back after those. So I think there's an opportunity here this is nothing against Toronto. This is not the Winnipeg Blue Bombers rolling into town this week with something on the line. So I'm going to take Edmonton plus5. Not sure if I'm comfortable enough sprinkling the money line here as well, but Elks plus5. Outside of that game against the Bombers, Cornelius has settled in a little bit here in the second half of the year. So I'm going to roll with the Elks here plus5 at home, buddy.
Well, I can say,
which I know is crazy to do.
That the Elks have bounced back from some big ass kickings over the course of this season. Well, the first part of that equation is certainly in effect right here because they got absolutely trounced last weekend here in the Peg. And Listen, I'm done betting on Edmonton at home. I've done it a few times. I said the week they were going to win was Montreal, and we all remember how that ended up. All those opportunities in the second half, and a pick six going back for 100-odd yards to be the difference in the game. I don't know. I think I'd be more optimistic on the Elks if they had shown anything in that game against Winnipeg. But I don't know. To me, watching that game, it seemed like that's a team that all the losses, the losing has kind of piled up on them, and they cannot wait for this season to be over. So, listen, I kind of hope you're right. I mean, I know you've got an incredible fan base there that has been suffering now for years. Those fans absolutely deserve a win. I'm just not sure that it's going to happen. I think Toronto is definitely the better team, and I think Toronto has done a good job of beating up on teams that are well below them in the standings.
They have done that. So, yeah, they have done that. So there's no doubt.
I'm gonna lay the 5 right now. I'm gonna lay the 5 right now on Toronto. I just have no faith in Edmonton, and until they win a game at home, or at least show me something at home, this was almost an auto pick right now going against Edmonton at home, and that certainly has done us well all season long betting CFL on the Lock Shop.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I will say though, winning record against the East, if it means anything. Now, it had to come on the road because they can't win at home. But winning record against the East. So they played the East relatively well-ish so far this season. And then we get Winnipeg in a really interesting game. We would probably advise you to wait on this one and see exactly what type of roster the Bombers are going to roll out. Obviously, this is a mean-nothing game, the first of 2 here down the stretch for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. With that being said, I really like the depth that this team has. You can't sit everybody. I mean, you're still going to have to dress your Schoens and your Dembskis and things like that, I would think. Zach Collaros, I don't know if he sees a football in the next couple of games, but Winnipeg, and I think this line has already been adjusted a little bit, kind of in expectation of that maybe, because the Bombers here are just a 2.5 point favorite on the road against the BC Lions. Huss, what's your vibe now with the Bombers?
Well, we've got some breaking news on this, basically what you talked about. So our guy Ed Tate over at bluebombers.com is at practice today. He's reporting that Drew Brown is taking the snaps with the first team offense. And both Stanley Bryan and Jamarcus Hardrick are not practicing. Jeff Gray and Eric Lofton are playing tackle. Chris Kolinkowski's in at guard. Michael Couture is playing center. And it is good to see that Alden Darby is back. This tells me, and again, we don't have any confirmation. We haven't heard from the coaches yet. This tells me that we might be getting the B team for the Bombers going out to BC and playing. And if that's the case, if anything, it's a stay away, or you can jump on BC. The folks over at CoolBet, I think, have been following Ed Tate's tweets, because an hour ago, this was Winnipeg -2.5. It's now Winnipeg -1.
Okay, so starting to move.
I'm telling you right now, if you got in a BC +2.5 early on, you may be able to have a nice little middle by the time this game kicks off. I'll stay with the Bombers because I just find that if I ever change picks afterwards, it always ends up blowing up. But, man, I mean, if the Bombers do throw in basically all of their backups and just give them some playing time, it's quite clear that this game means nothing to them other than a little bit of experience and keeping your top players healthy. So it'll be interesting. It's sort of too bad in a way that this game doesn't mean something. And I wonder about Winnipeg because, Dusty, their schedule, BC this week, then a bye, then a home game against BC, then another bye, and then the West Final. Now, one good thing is Mike O'Shea and Kyle Walters have some practice with this. They basically had a similar situation last year. Although in that case, they had the bye in the last week of the season and then the bye. So they did play a few of their guys for the first half in that final game before 2 weeks off. Everything about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers preparing to win November 13th in the West Final and get back to the Grey Cup right now. So I can't be too strong on any takes about the Bombers. And if today's practice is any indication, if you were thinking this was going to be the Zach Collaros show, it probably won't be right now. So
that's interesting because the Bombers kind of, I mean, if they wanted to really go out and bury the Lions, that would make sure that West semifinal is in Calgary, right? They could, if you let the Lions win a couple, that West semifinal might be in BC. And then if Nathan Rourke returns, you can have Nathan Rourke in a home West semi against Calgary. I mean, either way, that West semifinal, I can't wait to broadcast it. We just need to figure out if it's going to be in Calgary or Vancouver. From a broadcaster perspective, give me the indoor game with the great view at BC Place as opposed to a freezing cold game way up high where you can't see anything in McMahon. That's what I would love to see. But yeah, Winnipeg finishing up here against BC is rather interesting.
You know what is also interesting? I'm just looking at the schedule. BC has a road game at Edmonton in between those two games against Winnipeg. Calgary, for their part, has the home game against the Ticats.
And then the Riders.
Then they're at Saskatchewan, and then they're home to Saskatchewan. And those games absolutely could be meaningful for the Calgary Stampeders, which could be a disaster for Saskatchewan. Hamilton, for their part, they've got Ottawa in the final week of the season, and they've got Ottawa at home next week after this game in Calgary right now. So Calgary not only will be motivated to win their games, hoping that they can get that home playoff game, they also could be have a very large hand in the demise of the Green Riders, who might not even get to the playoff tournament when they're hosting the Grey Cup.
Right now, the Ottawa Red Blacks are huge Calgary Stampeders fans. They want them to beat Hamilton. They want them to beat the Riders twice. If Ottawa was to sweep those final two games against Hamilton, they're the third playoff team in the East. So think about that for a second. That's insane.
So Ottawa needs to beat Montreal and sweep Hamilton.
Yeah, and they're in.
Calgary take care of business.
If Calgary takes care of business, they're in. So, yeah, there's some interesting playoff scenarios, buddy. Yeah.
That was not a playoff permutation that I had wrapped my head around yet. And
it's possible.
Tell you what, maybe I'm going to change my Ottawa pick. Maybe I'm a Bobby Dice Red Blacks guy after what we heard after the game. Well, the picks are in, as I said, early on in the week, and there's not a lot of strong leans right now. This is the first time I think I've hit all favorites. I
don't think you've gone favorites.
Usually I've been taking points as much as possible. So I'm going to kind of hedge it on the Bombers right now, which, by the way, already is down to 1. And if this continues through the week, I think you'll see BC as a 3 or 4 point favorite if the Bombers are sending Drew Brown or resting many of their top players. But, the Bombers are booked for November 13th. Everything else very much up in the air. It should be a fun final 3 weeks in the Canadian Football League, especially out east.
All right, and before we wrap up, we're going to try to mix in as much hockey as we can. Well, football season kind of takes a lot of our focus, both CFL, NFL. And you know what? I was working on some picks today for this, and then you sent me your parlay, and I just said, oh, yeah, that's good. I'm going to ride with this. So, I mean, we're both on what Huss is about to lay out, because yes, this is it tonight. I love this for opening night. It pays pretty well. Huss, lay it out for us.
All right. Well, first up, I mean, we've got the Leafs and the Habs. The Leafs are a minus 256 favorite. I mean, it's a big, big number to lay on the road. But I really do think that the Montreal Canadiens and the Leafs are in very, very different weight classes or area codes in the National Hockey League right now. So I don't like taking minus 256. I do think the Leafs will have a good chance of winning this by 2. So let's take them on the puck line. That number was minus 101 yesterday. There's obviously some steam coming in on the Leafs for tonight. Minus 1.5. So Leafs win by 2 is minus 111. I had to laugh at this Colorado-Chicago game. First game of the season, and the Avalanche are a minus 435 home favorite against a team we're expecting to challenge with Arizona for one of the worst NHL teams of all time in Chicago. Now, usually it takes a long time in the season to see a minus 2.5 in the puck line. It's opening night in this case. Now, 2.5 is a lot. But if we take it to minus 1.5, a 2-goal win for the Hawks, it's minus 167. I think we can put that in on the parlay. We get a pretty good number right there. And then in talking to you, I knew that you were thinking Oilers. I mean, again, the Oilers are minus 189. I think we could go with that. But if we want to juice this up a little bit, if you go down in Coolbet to under money line, you can go home, tie, away, and a draw obviously is a regulation tie. Minus 116 on the Oilers in regulation. So Don't necessarily need the 2-goal win. Just get the Oilers to get it done in the regulation at 116. We add that to the parlay, and we're at plus 466, getting close to 5-1. So Leafs and Avs both to win by 2. Oilers in regulation, we're popping that in, plus 466 for a secondary opening night parlay in the National Hockey League.
And if you're worried about the Oilers in regulation, you just take a money line at minus 189. It's plus 365. So you go from plus 460 to plus 360, or plus 466 to plus 365. So it basically comes down to how comfortable you are with that Oilers Canucks game tonight. But I told you earlier, and I will continue to ride on this one tonight. I think that Colorado Chicago game, to see a 2.5 at the beginning of the season, it's ridiculous. Oh my goodness.
I was also wondering to see, like, can we get 3.5? Can we get 4.5? I mean, it wouldn't at all surprise me if the Avs go out and drop a 7-1 opening night win on them.
Not against
or
Chicago.
Maybe lean on Patty and the guys at Coolbet to give us some more options for frankly, for anybody playing Chicago.
I was going to say, it's basically a fade Chicago play the entire season, right? So, yeah.
You know what? Are people sleeping on Colorado? I know this is nuts because they're the clear Stanley Cup favorite. But, man, I hear a lot of Edmonton. I hear a lot of Calgary right now. I mean, I know they lost Nazem Kadri. The goaltending's a little different right now. Like, I certainly the bookies aren't sleeping on Colorado. But the more and more people I hear making picks, people from different markets talking about teams, like, you would think that the Avs would maybe be a little bit more near the top of the conversation, but they don't seem to be the sexy preseason pick that, and again, maybe it's just no one wants to pick the plus 450 favorite before the season. I'm not too sure, but I expect them to be an absolute powerhouse again this season. I mean, I think everyone else in the Central is playing for second place, basically in game number 1.
In that division, I would agree. I think that's one of the reasons the number's still so good. Even though when you hear a lot of people say, well, Colorado won't be as good, which might be true. They may not be what they were last year, but they're still by far their best. Like, I don't think Minnesota, after trading Fiala and bringing in nobody, is going to track them down. I don't think St. Louis is going to track them down. I don't think Nashville is going to track them down. So I think they cruise to a division title.
No doubt. Oh, and by the way, I'm just noticing, this is just a nice little cool bet piece of info for folks. If you are betting on football with us on the weekend, and you'll see you have that option if you opt in to place the promo bet. If you bet $25 on any of the football games, the next week you get a free $25 bet. And I just realized I was able to drop that in on our parlay for tonight. So
there you go. Perfect.
Essentially, we're free rolling on night 1 for all of these teams that are playing tonight. And again, if you want, just check out the promos at CoolBet. It's very simple. You just opt in. It's a $25 bet, which you get a free bet the following week if you make that. So just a little CoolBet tip for you cool bettors out there.
Enjoy your hockey games tonight. Get a good night's rest, because tomorrow we're setting up the Bears and Commanders in Thursday Night Football.
I'm so ready for this game. I already have one pick locked and loaded. I'm still considering the side right now, but in a weird, perverse way, I love these horrible Thursday night games. Like, don't get me wrong. Give me Chiefs Chargers or one of the good games that's on the schedule. But there's always a couple of absolute dogs. And considering what we saw last week.
We cashed last week. It was great.
Football,
yeah,
exactly. That was one of my favorite games of the year. Under Colts, the 4 field goals. Something tells me that 4 field goal play might be on the docket as well this week. Just saying. But we'll get into that tomorrow. And then, man, I'm already looking ahead this Chiefs-Bills game on Sunday. I cannot wait. Hopefully keep the heater going on Friday with the picks, and maybe catch a couple parlays on Saturday's show as well. But in the meantime, they're your CFL picks, and hopefully we can cash a ticket tonight, and you can be there to watch the final game come in under the buzzer for a lock shop win to start off.
Nothing like it. There's nothing like it. Enjoy it, folks. We'll be back with more lock shop content tomorrow.